Welcome to the Braemar Life Skills Academy podcast. The world is changing faster than ever, and the world of education is too. Advances in psychology, biology, and a whole range of other fields have opened up new lines of thought about the purpose of school and how it can best serve a new generation of students. Join me on the Braemar Life Skills Academy podcast every week to explore these new ideas. In our last episode, we spoke with Dov Shapiro about how his company, Connect You, is helping to address teen mental health outcomes through social-emotional learning. And today, I'm going to be speaking with my colleague and good friend, Miss Jessica Paul, about pretty much everything that we do in terms of our student programs here. Miss Paul, Jess, and I have been working together these past several years to evolve and develop our extracurricular student programs, our intercurricular student programs, our co-curricular student programs, whatever you want to call it, all of the stuff that our students are doing day to day, week to week, year to year, both in and outside the classroom, but not necessarily related to curriculum and credit, related to themselves as people, their own wellness, and their interaction with their peers, those around them, and the environment around them. As a background and as sort of a foundation for talking about what we've been up to through this crazy year and before it, and maybe what we hope to do with it in the future, our student programs at Braemar are built around the question that every educator, of course, asks themselves, which is, what are the needs of my student demographic, in our case, teenagers? And of course, at Braemar, what are the needs of an international student base, a teenager who's coming to us from across the world, often without the support or the immediate support of family in their lives. They're coming to a new city, new language group, new culture, and they're sitting in class originally with a whole bunch of people that they've never met before. So what do you see as those two questions? What are the primary needs of any teenager universally? What are the primary needs or the special needs of a Braemar student as they first enter our school?
I think one of the, maybe not primary need, and I realize I'm now not answering your question.
That's
one
okay.
thing I think
we can go anywhere with this.
One thing I think we do strive to kind of build and instill in our students, as well as most teenagers, is that independence, building up their responsibilities that they have themselves as students, coming to class every day, whether it's online or in person, navigating themselves through a new city and a new country on their own, finding a place within their community, but then also providing that necessary support network that they are going to be lacking here when they get here. And I think the pandemic really kind of opened that up for us and kind of gave us an insight into what a lot of our students are struggling with and what they're not getting. And that's, some of them living in a basement apartment alone in the dark and not seeing anyone for days, weeks, months on end. So as much as we're trying to build that, come and live in this new city on your own and be successful, but also how are we going to support them, and also how are you going to interact with your community around you? Yeah.
It's been said before, and I've kind of borrowed this from a number of people, but the pandemic has been both an accelerator, I think, of a lot of different trends, and a magnifying glass.
Absolutely.
Right? It's really, really helped to clarify our situation as individuals and the things that we need just to be okay, just to get through a day. So much of which pre-pandemic, or in the case of many of our students, when they're in their home countries, when we're children in our home cultures, so much of that stuff that keeps us okay is provided for us, is kind of done automatically. And so COVID kind of revealed how intentional we need to be in a lot of cases now about receiving things that previously were provided for us without our thinking. The foundations of my thinking come out of that basic Maslow's hierarchy, the idea that in order to be well and in order to become what you have it in you to be, you must, of course, achieve those basics of security and safety. But then there's these metaphysical needs, those three on top of the hierarchy pyramid. We talk about a person needing to belong.
Yes.
Right? And that means that they need to have some sense of their own identity and some sense of how that identity fits into the environment around them. They need to have self-esteem. And self-esteem comes from both external recognition and internal recognition, so that we need to be recognizing identities. We need to be praising positive processes in our students. And then that big one, everybody's still kind of working out exactly what this means for them, but self-actualization. How do you become your best self? Now, that framework has always been front of mind for me, but over the course of the years, and especially during this pandemic period, the idea of anti-fragile systems has kind of overlapped, or it's infiltrated this idea, in the sense that in order to progress up that hierarchy, to move from just having your basic needs met to feeling belonging, to feeling self-esteem, to being in a position to actualize yourself, you need to understand yourself as an anti-fragile system, a system that becomes stronger, like our muscles, when it meets challenge, when it is stressed, when it's put under stress, and that not running from that stress, but rather heading straight towards it, in some cases heading straight towards and through failure and extreme discomfort, is how we achieve the best parts of life, fulfillment and purpose. And we see that in really, really obvious ways with our students. So without further ado, that's kind of the theoretical foundations for what we do, but it's obviously a lot more interesting and a lot more fun to talk about. What does this look like in practice? Our students come to us from all over the world, pretty much every continent, more countries than I can name in any one go, and I have tried on this podcast. I'm not going to again because it's a fool's errand. They come to us from all over the world. They meet in this wonderfully multicultural city. They meet us in the center of it in downtown Toronto, and like any metropolis, there's a ton going on. There's a certain amount of chaos and noise that has to be accommodated.
Always.
And then in normal times, they all meet us physically in this building. In this past year, many met us physically, but many also met us online, learning through distance. And from that moment, from that first meeting moment, we begin the process of hopefully covertly moving students through their Maslow's hierarchy, moving them towards resilience and the type of independence that you described. So I've got a jumble of memories and thoughts in my head, so I'm hoping you're going to help me sort them all out. Can you just talk to us about those first few weeks? You're in the classroom with them more than I am, but we're doing stuff at lunchtime, before school, after school, on orientation days. Walk us through the first couple weeks for a Braemar student. So
I think depending on classes and levels and things like that, especially our lower level English-speaking students, students that are joining us and going straight into, say, an ESL-B or an ESL-C class, most of our first lessons and units will focus primarily on just building up our English skills so that we are comfortable and able to communicate with everyone around us. Not just, common classroom phrases, but also how are you going to interact with and speak with students that do not speak your same first language? Because most of the time, there is going to be at least one other student in your class that does not speak the same language as you. And the one unifying aspect is that we are all here together learning and speaking English. But also giving our students a chance to meet and interact with students from their home community, or at least from their home countries, so that there is that sense of community and familiarity that they're able to experience here. Maybe some aspect of comfort as well. We do a lot of trips in and around our local community, things like Kensington Market, U of T area, campus, just kind of getting our students, especially the brand new ones, out and around and seeing this is what the city has to offer. It's not just Tim Hortons at the corner and the TTC. There is so much more around us that we have access to. And I think that is a really important kind of first step, is just kind of showing them what there is here. And then aside from that, we get into kind of opening up and showing them what can happen here at Braemar, not just within the classes themselves, but also within our school community as a whole.
Right. It's very, very difficult to learn. It's very difficult to grow when you don't feel that you belong in the place where you're doing those tasks. And so a student may come to us with a very, very high level of English proficiency, and they can move into sort of belonging in the larger Braemar community and belonging in even our city a bit more quickly than others. Other students come to us with, they're still in the process of their language learning journey, right? They're developing. And so the first belonging that's available to them is the belonging in their original language group, their native speaking language group. And so we have a sort of tricky rope to walk because we need them to belong, but we also need them to extend themselves past that first language, because of course many of them are here to either master English or get themselves ready for a Canadian university or college setting, or really in most cases both.
Absolutely.
Right. So, for example, a Vietnamese student comes to us. They're placed at an ESLC or an ESLD level. They can go into a shop in Toronto and order something. They can read a map. They can ask for directions, etc. But maybe they're not quite in a place where they can sit in a 12U English class and discuss the finer points of figurative language and the metaphysics of meaning, etc. And so that student looks around their classroom, they see someone who's also from their culture, who speaks their language, and they jump right to them, exactly as you that motion. Please hold me close, don't let me go. And they have their belonging there.
Yes.
But then that belonging becomes a bit boundaried and exactly. Just like those classic Americana movies. We don't have goths and jocks and cheerleaders. No, we have language groups here.
Yes.
And so we give the students an orientation session. They meet their teachers. We do a meet your teachers fair where each of our teachers kind of has a chance to express to students what are they interested in, what sort of events and clubs are they going to be helping to run this year. The students have a chance to see maybe where their interests might be represented.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then we move from that directly into student clubs, which launch week 2 of most of our terms. You have the distinction and the honor of running unarguably the most popular, the most well-attended, the most talked about, and I think the longest running student club at our school.
Yes.
Can you just talk about that club and maybe anything else that you've been involved in that area?
Absolutely. So Cooking Club started off as a program known as Rooks to Cooks, where we had actual professional chefs come in and teach a lot of our students some of the basic skills that were required in cooking.
Sorry to interrupt. Just
of course.
Quick shout out to Chef Shai Mandel, who was the CEO of Rooks to Cooks in the past, a wonderful program here in Toronto that will send, as Ms. Paul just said, professional chefs into schools and help young people learn the basics of cooking, which to me is a fundamental skill and one that gives them a lot of self-empowerment.
Necessary.
So thank you, Shai, for helping us get this all started.
And I think at the time it was well attended. I think we maxed out as many students as we could have at that time. And we did different cuisines from all over the world. We had a Vietnamese spring roll day program. We had an Italian tiramisu cooking session. We did Greek salads and pitas and all sorts of things. And always kind of nutritious and healthy and simple enough that our students could potentially recreate any of the dishes that they learned how to make in class in their own homes as well. Unfortunately, we were then shut down and put on kind of hiatus for a year.
It is hard to cook digitally.
It's very hard.
Something the internet hasn't quite provided for yet.
For sure. But we had such positive feedback and such a positive turnout. And I think especially once we did start learning in person again, it was another way of bringing that feeling of belonging. Students, first of all, students love to eat.
Don't we all?
Giving them a chance to come and just eat food brought in a lot of people. But also, I think it's really opened up a lot of doors for a lot of students who maybe didn't necessarily know where they fit in. It gave them a chance to meet a lot of different students, to work together, to hone their skills or build their basic skills that they might not have had, while also teaching them about nutrition and health and necessities for life. Not our expressions banquet, but before that, when we did our borscht night, we made borscht as a response to the war happening in Ukraine, simply as a way to provide some small aspect of comfort and safety when so much of the world was gone to hell. This was a way of, bringing in students to just come and sit and eat and be together without having to think about everything that was happening, all the bad. And, we could just come and have some Slavic comfort food for some of our students. And it was in my mind, it's one of our nicest ones. It was the first time that everyone had sat down together. We prepped everything, we cooked everything, and then we all ate together. Yeah. And I think that's the first time we'd really done that. And that was really special.
It's a strange thing when a teenager recognizes their own metaphysical needs, right? And they see that being supported and recognized by their teachers, but also by their peers. Because that moment in particular this year, especially following COVID, this incredibly confusing, stressful time, and then perhaps even more confusing, more stressful, and more devastating, the invasion of Ukraine. And we have a lot of students from Ukraine. We have a lot of students from Russia. Yes. And seeing them sitting together, sharing a dish that each of them would have grown up eating. We call these things comfort food, home cooking, for a reason. So not only do they see their identities being represented and valued, but they see what they share. Again, a perfect example of a club that is, lest we forget, really fun. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
We recognize that there's a recreational, strict entertainment aspect to all of these things, and that's one of the ways we get students in the door, giving them a meal and at least one night a week being able to guarantee that the students who show up, 30, 40 of them each time, are being given a nutritionally complete dinner.
Yes.
And then the skill set, the educational aspect. When I was a teenager, I had no idea how I could barely make macaroni, right? I could barely make a fried egg. So now when my 3-year-old nephew is showing off his brand new fried eggs that he's just learned to make, I feel incredibly embarrassed. But I didn't want that for our students.
No.
And so they're learning a few of the basic skills, cutting techniques, how to start with your aromatics and stir fry up some veggies, and how do you balance your proteins, your carbs, and your fats, etc. Also learning about budgeting a little bit. Yeah. How do you buy food that's not going to break the bank and support yourself as you're going through perhaps the beginning of a career or your time in university or college. And then those softer benefits, the recognition and the esteem, right? When you make food for somebody else and they gather around a table with you and say, boy, this food is good. I feel great. That's got to be one of the oldest evolutionary forms of recognition.
Absolutely.
So we're bringing that. And Ms. Paul brings it every single week. And when we talk about hopes for the future, surely near the forefront of that is going to be...
Definitely continuing cooking club.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's make it bigger and better every year.
Other club that I've been a big part of, really started off as a bunch of smaller clubs. And that was currently our Creatives Club, but originally started off as Creatives Club, Drama Club,
Social media club, there were yearbook contributors. It was all
sorts of different things, all with creative elements. And we noticed, Mike, you noticed especially, that a lot of our students who were attending Creatives Club and Drama Club and Yearbook Club and all of these other things and the newspaper, and were going to all of these same clubs and kind of stretching themselves a little bit thin. And it made sense for us to just simply combine all of our aspects together. And I think because of that, we were able to really move forward with a lot of some of our bigger events that we were able to do at school. Even starting way back with Thanksgiving, we kind of put together a Thanksgiving event We had a lot of art contributions. We had minimal drama performances. Combining of these clubs, we've really been able to take on a lot more than we ever really thought we could. And the Expressions Banquet is an excellent example of that. Just students that you never expect to take an interest, getting up on stage and rocking out, and
all sorts of feeling that was.
All sorts of artistic expressions, but different artworks and media components and rock bands and skits and poetry readings and anything and everything that any of our students could possibly think of was represented in this evening.
Yeah. I'm thinking you'll know the student immediately, but there was a student who got up who I had thought of as somebody who was just kind of coasting through his time here at school, and he gets up and delivers probably a real life 5-minute motivational speech about how to think about your dreams and how to go after your dreams, what type of attitude to take. And I talked to him afterwards. I'm like, man, that was really, really well prepared. You had that down, right? And he goes, well, yeah, I'd better. I tell it to myself every single morning. These students who hadn't participated in Creatives Club until the Expressions Banquet, but then they get up on stage at Expressions Banquet, and you see where their passions are and where their agency lies, and they play this incredible rock set. They play these Arctic Monkeys covers, and it just blew my mind. And the entire crowd is up and standing ovation. People are throwing flowers onto the stage. It's a beautiful thing. Yes. It's also beautiful to see that banquet is. It's called a banquet because at the end of the performance, the entire crowd of maybe 100 students, teachers, staff, and parents is fed by the cooking club.
By our cooking club.
And all the promotion for that event came out of the Creatives Club, right? Yes. Designing posters and announcements and social media and advertisements, everything that we needed for that. And every student who participated saw themselves in that. They had control over that event. They had agency in it.
Yes.
So you ask, why would you spend money and goodness knows how many hours putting that thing together?
It's very obvious when they get up on stage.
That's it. Yeah. You don't need an explanation once you see on stage, and very much looking forward to seeing the videos of all of that, with the exception of that final performance, because that was a bit amateur. So in addition to Creatives Club and Cooking Club, which have been incredibly successful, we also want to give big shout outs to our teachers, Miss Nicole Boyce, Hashina Pillay, Zoya Iqbal, Rebecca Bitton, who's been on this podcast before, and several others, because none of this happens by accident. And
shout out to Mr. Dunsmore for always helping supervise Cooking Club as well. Yeah,
and he's running his own Ethics Bowl, Philosophy and Debate Club every Friday at lunch, distanced or in person. He's been doing that for a couple of years now. James Olson, who's been on this podcast before, helping us run all our sports, helping us supervise our most recent event, which we'll get to in just a minute. But yeah, we're so lucky to be surrounded by teachers who recognize that a student's success does not begin and end in the classroom.
Absolutely.
In addition to those clubs, just to kind of fill out the roster, if you will, we've got a cultural language and exchange club, Miss Carol Rivera, Joanne Nepomacino, and Floridel Quindigian, running a club for students who are developing those language skills and want to explore the cultures around us.
Went to Kensington Market last week and have already had requests to do it again in the future.
No surprise there. Kensington Market, one of the kind of major cultural centers here in downtown Toronto. Other trips to be taken. Chinatown is 5 minutes away from us. Some great Chinese and Vietnamese culture, food and music to be found there. We've got, as you said, the University of Toronto, Baldwin Village, Little Italy's just down the street. So we are well provided for in terms of diverse cultural representation here, and that's a club that makes sure our students have access to that. We've got an entrepreneurs club, again, Mr. Olson, Miss Bitton, helping students who have that entrepreneurial spirit to begin to realize those ideas, make prototypes, make pitch decks, etc. Our wellbeing club teaches students a couple different frameworks for mindful journaling and mindfulness strategies.
Which seems to be combining now into our Creatives Club as well, with the mindful mandalas. And we have our private music lessons with Ms. Boyce as well.
Yeah.
So.
What a cool idea that was. Miss Boyce brought in one of our parents from Turkey, for an afternoon of mindful mandala. We have our exams coming up in 2 days. 2 days till our end of term exams. Let's get back to that programming. Yeah, we don't want to think about that. But for the students who are extra stressed or who are experiencing a bit of pre-exam anxiety, which if you've ever written an exam, you probably know what that feels like.
Stressful.
Yeah, they spent an hour learning this lovely artistic tradition and having a bit of mandala done. And it's little stuff like that that's going to 10 students at a time or 5 students at a time make this place a more stress-free environment, and a place of growth rather than
stagnation.
Repression, contraction, stagnation, exactly. There's a few other things we want to touch on. We're not just student clubs here. As we've said again and again, lucky to be surrounded by people who embrace these ideas, but we're also lucky to be in a physical setting that has more than enough opportunities to see them realized.
Yes.
We've done I've lost track of how many student trips we've done, and especially as the summer has come on and the weather has warmed, we do more and more. These past 2 months have been bananas, nonstop in terms of student events and trips. What were your favorites? What do you remember from them?
Oh, I think some of my favorites are the ones that are not necessarily as structured. Things like AGO and the aquarium are beautiful trips, and it's getting our students out to kind of experience a lot of the culture and just life that Toronto has to offer. But I think some of my favorites have been like Toronto Island, where it's literally just all day at the beach.
Hard not to like that one.
Yeah, it's we're giving students the opportunity to again see that Toronto is not just college and Spadina, and some of them, the first thing that they say when they get off the ferry is, "This is here. Mm-hmm. You have a beach. You have all of these things," and we had no idea. And it's really cool to just kind of see their minds and their world just expand just a little bit more.
Because we're realizing, especially through things like COVID, mm-hmm. that putting a young person face to face with another young person and letting them sort out, to put it blithely, how do we play together,
yes.
right? How do we get on together? Especially maybe if we're from different cultures or look different or sound different or speak different languages, et cetera. How are we going to make this pleasurable mm-hmm. and purposeful for both of us? And sometimes that goes poorly. But that's where that anti-fragility stuff comes in, right? Because that poor interaction, when it's unstructured, is not something that gets shamed or disciplined from an authority above you. It's something that you just simply have the unburdened ability to reflect on, right? And you're incentivized in the extreme to learn those lessons. And so when we get a whole bunch of students on a beach and we put the volleyball net up and we say, listen, guys, there's a whole bunch to see here on these multiple islands. Enjoy yourselves. The challenge becomes, how do I enjoy myself? Yeah. And I would argue that there's as much learning going on in the sand there on that day as there is in any classroom around the world.
Definitely.
Just because it's front of mind for me right now, I was going to save this for the end, but you and I, along with Mr. Olson, have just come back from a pretty special weekend.
Yes!
And I've got for those of you who can view the video, I've got my student leader sweatshirt on. Let me see if I can turn here. Yep. Proud of this. This was designed by last year's student leader group and something that we were able to give to all of our student leaders at the end of their time here in lieu of a trip like the one we just took. Because, of course, last year we were unable to travel in groups on a bus or book reservations like this. But this year we got it done. Thank goodness. Olympia Student Leader Camp Retreat. Fresh in our minds, even if we are somewhat exhausted from it.
Still so tired.
What was it? What did we do that for? Who came with us, and what were the results?
So there were. Why did we do it? I think it was, like you said, it was a bit of a reward for our students that have contributed so much to our school community. Students who have been here for an extended period of time and who have really immersed themselves in Braemar. Mm-hmm. They join the clubs, they participate, they are just prominent faces at Braemar, and they interact with everyone and anyone, while also maintaining a decent academic standing. They go to their classes all the time. They're getting the grades, but they're also out every day, just being part of the school. And there's no other way to put it other than that needs to be recognized. And having them come on this trip was a small way for us to kind of say, we see you, we know what you're doing, and thank you. Myself and Mike and Mr. James Olson, we and 24 of our student leaders traveled 2.5 hours into Northern Ontario.
2.5 hours Friday, and then
Friday
4 hours
morning.
back on Sunday. Folks, do not come back into the city of Toronto at the end of a weekend. It's a fool's errand. Cottage season is in full effect. That said, with the exception of that return journey, I
was almost grateful that it lasted that long, because that meant it was still happening. But we traveled up to Olympia Sport Camp in Huntsville, Ontario, and it was a really incredible thing for a lot of our students to see this other world, really, and experience so many things that I think we as Canadian individuals who've grown up here almost take for granted. I know for me, like I grew up going to cottages every summer. I went to summer camp. I've done that experience my entire life. This was nothing new. But for a lot of our students, seeing a lake and swimming in a lake or not swimming in a lake was things that they had never experienced before. Seeing all of the green and the surrounding trees and nature and flocks of geese on the property and turtles laying eggs on the beach, random chipmunks and raccoons just feet away from us was just an experience that a lot of them have never had before. And I think one student, he said it best, maybe not said it best, but his reaction was, what have I been doing with my life? Like, I've never experienced something like this. What am I doing? And had to cut him some slack and be like, you're 18, it's fine.
Yes. Doesn't feel like it when you are 18.
No.
But it's important that they know that. That's exactly how I think of this trip. It's giving them just a totally different setting and a version of life that they might consider for themselves.
Yes.
And if they feel that pull, right? If they recognize themselves in that thing, whether it's nature, some of the outdoor life skills that we were doing, some of the adventure style apparatus. Like we had students climbing rock walls and high ropes courses, building campfires, doing swim tests, like a lot of stuff. A lot
of students are now planning to take up archery once they get to college and university.
That's right. Yeah, for better or for worse.
Yes.
But it would seem a shame to me for these students who've been with us for a bit longer, right? These are grades, almost entirely grades 11s and 12s, who've really demonstrated their commitment to the student culture here. Time and time again, I'm asked questions in the midst of a day. Perhaps I'm doing some work and a student can come and ask me about their cell phone plan or their bank account or how do they get around on public transportation or where can they find a specific type of food at a grocery store or a restaurant. And like anyone, sometimes I just don't quite have the time on hand to really address that question in the fullness that it deserves. And so I can look into the hallway and grab an Amir or grab a Lucy and say, I trust this student to be mature and empathetic and knowledgeable enough to be able to help you with what you need in this moment.
Always.
Right? So we take those students and we show them a part of Canada that you don't get here in downtown Toronto. Neither is better nor worse, but they're both extraordinary in their own ways, and we hope that they see themselves in that. We hope they find something there that will be impetus for further growth. I think of it as almost like a progress marker.
Yes.
I was thinking about our Creatives Club and what you were saying about it earlier. And one thing that we learned this year is that Creatives Club works best when there's a destination or a goal coming up that they're working towards. Our first instinct was to keep Creatives Club very, very open because, of course, it's artistry and it's creative and left brain, right brain, whatever that is. I know but that didn't work quite as well because when you don't set any deadlines, students stay in the inspiration phase and don't move to the productivity phase. So we started giving them goals like our Thanksgiving holiday event. So we need advertising for this, we need a gallery for this, et cetera, and they ran with it. And we got some of our best creative work out of them for that. You need these markers on the way up the mountain to see yourself becoming. And that's what the Olympia Camp Retreat is. That's what Expressions Banquet is, truly. And I'm just now realizing that maybe students are going to hear this and think that we're being very covert and tricky. Yeah, look what we did to you. It's also fun for anybody listening out there. But this is a chance, in the case of the Olympia Camp Retreat, for students to sit for a second in nature and see the progress that they've made and see that progress recognized. Right? I think that provides, think of it as scaffolding. I think that provides a new foundation, right? A new starting point for the next phase in their life as they move further and further, and hopefully something they remember for years to come. I know I will, alongside all of the events and the volunteering and the trips and the clubs. I know we're running out of time here. Miss Paul, as always, is doing double, triple, quadruple duty as a podcast guest, but she's going to be going to teach a class in just a few minutes. And your flexibility and adaptability are one of the characteristics that I treasure most about you. You teach
everything.
Everything.
Yeah. French,
hospitality and tourism, drama, fashion, ESL. The list goes on and on.
I think I'm up to 19 different classes. Yeah.
19 different classes here, folks. Whoever told you teaching is easy, kick him in the shins for me, would you? Before we let you go, we're not done.
No.
Right? The year has come together beautifully, and we're proud of what we've been able to offer, and the fruits have borne out. But September is fast approaching. What are our hopes for the future? What do we hope continues, and maybe what are we looking to develop and evolve more of?
Oh, I think I want to see Braemar getting more involved in the surrounding community as much as possible. We've really started that already, but I think there are a lot of aspects of Toronto that haven't even scraped the surface on yet, and I think giving our students, especially, different avenues, different areas that they can explore and maybe eventually see themselves in is something that I would love to see kind of where we progress in the future. I know that's very open and very vague, but Toronto is a city in the world that has anything and everything you could possibly want. And I think we've only accessed a small portion of that. I also think with our changing world and our more globalized world and more awareness in what's happening, there are so many more things that we can get involved in. It's just a matter of figuring out what our students want and what they need and going from there.
That's it. Yeah. No apologies needed for vague open-endedness, right? That's where all of this started.
I see, yeah.
Right? Cooking Club started with, I think our students could probably use some support with food and nutrition. Yeah. That may be vague and open-ended, but it's a wonderful starting point. We've had, I think, a very good foundational starting point this year and these past years. I want to give shout-outs to Julian Picone at Scott Mission.
Yes.
A wonderful charitable organization just down the street who have welcomed our student volunteers for several years now, helping to do meal prep and inventory for an organization that provides quite a range of services to the underserved members of our community. Shout out to May Tangnathasap at Fort York Food Bank, who has also welcomed us, doing very similar things. Got us in on the Coldest Night of the Year fundraiser, and now we're helping to build the garden just outside there. So we got a student group going there after school today. And finally, Maria Solikovsky at Wild by Nature Garden Homestead in East Toronto. She has welcomed volunteers every Thursday for 3 hours for the past 6 weeks, helping to build the homestead there, giving students the type of ecological, botanical, herbological skills that is going to save them money and hopefully enhance their lives, getting them those volunteer hours, but exactly as you said, making them feel like this place is their home, that their identity extends beyond themselves to the support of others. And long may those initiatives continue and grow. We look forward to this summer, our first ever participation in the Grange Park Festival.
Nice.
Yeah. I haven't told anyone about that yet because it's coming up in 3 months, but very much looking forward to supporting them and their work in the community. And I mean, Jess,
it's been a pleasure, Mr. Ellsby.
It's a ton of work, but man, it's the most fulfilling kind of work. And this year, I would not have survived. I wouldn't still be here without you. So
Likewise.
Thank you for everything that you do. And I can't wait for the first week of September to get a whole new batch of students into cooking club, sports, volunteering, creatives, all the other stuff that we do. Going to give you the final word before we get out of here. Talk to the students, the parents, anybody in the Braemar community. What do you want them to know about this place, and how do you feel about it?
It's a world and all of it. It's a whole world in its own. There's nothing like it, and if you're going to join us here, we can't wait to have you.
Yeah, that's it. Couldn't have said it better. Folks, thanks for being with us on this special episode review of the student programs at Braemar. Looking forward to bringing you more episodes like this in the future. And special thanks to Miss Paul for being here with me today. We'll see you next time. And join us for our next episode, where I'll be talking to Rebecca Bitton, teacher and life coach, as well as her student, Miss Amira Gilani, about mindfulness and healing from both a teacher and student's perspective.